Welcome to another episode of Millennial Investing Explained. Here's today's question. Let's fast forward a few years and assume somebody has sort of gotten their financial picture in order, or they're at least along the right track, and they maybe want to take it a step further. At what point does somebody need to consider hiring a financial advisor? And does everyone even need one?
So I think that if you use a professional, whether it's in finance or law or medicine, well, actually definitely in medicine, you're going to have a better outcome. The challenge with financial advice is how do you afford somebody who's going to give you good, unbiased, objective advice? I think that the proliferation in robo advisors has helped, particularly from the investment side, because it used to be that you would have to work with somebody who was paid based on what they sold you. And that's how you'd get your advice. That's how everybody got their advice until they're independent advisors. But a lot of independent advisors have account minimums that make it prohibitive to work with them. So I do think as soon as you can meet an account minimum of a robo advisor, that's when you should use one. I think the sooner you can outsource that investment advice, the better. So I used to mow my lawn. We bought our house in 2010 and we got a house with a big yard. I used to think I wanted a big yard. After having a house with a big yard, I now know that's not something I want. But we had it for 8 years. Oh, actually, I guess maybe 9 years. And it used to take me like 90 minutes to mow the lawn. And I'd try to do it on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. It needed to be mowed every 6 days or so. But sometimes it'd be Saturday. And look, I just didn't want to do it. Either I was being lazy or I wanted to go do something with friends, or maybe the weather didn't look great or something came up where I wouldn't mow the lawn and I wouldn't have checked the weather. And oh, well, it rained and I can't do it Sunday. And well, I got to go to work Monday. And suddenly my grass is out of control and it's long. And then I got to cut it. If you ever mow your lawn with really long grass, it takes forever and it looks awful. But like for the 5 years that I was mowing my lawn on my own, like I didn't kill the grass. It was fine. It looked like it wasn't overgrown most of the time. But the year that I hired someone to mow our lawn, it looked so much nicer. The guy cutting it was doing all this stuff I would have never thought to do. He's cutting it in multiple directions. He was doing different heights of grass based on like the sun exposure. He was seeding strategically. He was going around the flower beds. And ultimately I got not just a nicer looking lawn, but a healthier lawn. And I think that finances and investing are a lot like that. Anybody can do it on their own, but it's really hard to avoid mistakes. And a lot of investment success comes down to minimizing mistakes and just getting the heck out of the way of compound interest. So your question, this was the super long response to when's the right time to hire an advisor. I think if you have investment dollars beyond your company retirement plan, go ahead and find a robo advisor. In fact, even though Bright Plans really focus on corporate financial wellness, I guess you can go to brightplan.com/Peter and you can use that platform, and it's my firm and certified fiduciary by the Center of Fiduciary Excellence. But you can also go to one of the other dozens of robos out there and get low-cost investment advice. And as long as you kind of set it and forget it, you can be on a good path. When you start having more complex needs, like you need an estate plan or taxes, or you're trying to evaluate insurance, it is really important to find an advisor who's a fiduciary.
If someone listening to the show was, after hearing that, decides they want to hire a financial professional to assist them with their money, what are some of the most important things they need to look out for, and what questions should they be asking them?
The most important thing is that you work with someone who's a fiduciary, which means that by law, they have to put the client's interests above everyone else's, including their own. And the important thing about working with a fiduciary is that you want to get their fiduciary commitment in writing. Because some people will say, well, of course I act in my client's best interest. Okay, well, you put it in writing? Well, I can't put it in writing because compliance, If they won't put it in writing, they're not going to act as a fiduciary for you. And then similarly, there are some people who can act as a fiduciary while developing your plan, but can remove their hat of fiduciary and act under a different standard to sell you products. So unless you're getting someone who's acting as a fiduciary at all times, you can't ever be certain that you're getting unbiased, objective advice. So I think that's one really, really important piece. I personally think it's nice to work with someone when they have a deep bench of talent, or if they have a wide range of knowledge, because one person, I work at a firm with 65 people where my sole focus is largely just managing the money that we have here. There's, I used to be a solo advisor where you'd have to be responsible for knowing everything about investments and doing all the due diligence and taxes and estate planning, and just a lot of work for one person to do. And if that one person gets hit by a bus, then like, what do you do then? So I'm generally pretty biased to finding someone who has at least a succession plan or a backup plan or a deep bench to cover you. But that fiduciary piece is definitely the most important to me.
Is there a way to check a resource or a website or anything to confirm that somebody is actually a fiduciary? And is there a governing body?
The SEC is who governs registered investment advisors, what people call RIAs, and they fill out this thing called a Form ADV Part 2. So all this like jargony stuff, you're like, what in the world? I think, a decent place to go is you can go to brokercheck.com and you can type in a person's name, and you can get background checks if there's been any complaints about them. It will let you know if they are registered with the SEC or not. And if they're not registered with the SEC, it'll have a little link saying, we're going to take you to the SEC site. That's a good sign. But generally speaking, you should be able to ask outright and ask for them to put it in writing. And if they won't do it in writing, then I think that's your best bet there. Because there are ways to claim your fiduciary and then still kind of remove that fiduciary hat at times. And honestly, I think it's unfair to the consumers that it's that difficult to figure out whether or not someone's acting in your best interest. Because if you go to the doctor and he or she prescribes you medicine, you assume that they're doing it because it's in the best interest of your health, not because they're getting a trip to Hawaii for it. So, why shouldn't financial professionals be held to the same standard as a CPA or an attorney or a doctor? But yeah, it is unfortunate. You go to BrokerCheck. Honestly, I can't remember if it's brokercheck.org or brokercheck.com. You can put in someone's name. That can be a first step to help you out.
Yeah, it seems like one of those things that should just be a given. You shouldn't really have to even think twice about this. But, like you said, it definitely is something that you need to take into consideration.
Well, and the CFP marks, so when people have those designations behind their names, the Certified Financial Planner, they updated their ethics section this year to say that you must be acting in a fiduciary capacity to use those letters. And that's put some really big firms in a weird position because they don't act in a fiduciary capacity. And so those people can't use those letters. So if they're actively using the CFP, again, it's not a guarantee, but it's a pretty good chance that they are acting in a fiduciary capacity. At least they're supposed to be. That's what otherwise they get ethic dings.
That's all for this episode of Millennial Investing Explained. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or subscribe to our YouTube channel to get even more free content.